The multiverse had no sky, not one that made sense. Here, in the space between worlds, the evil Spider-Man moved as if through water, each step bending strands of light that stretched into infinity. They weren't threads in any literal sense, but to his eyes, they looked like veins. And every vein led to another spider. He followed the first to a familiar scent. The world was young, bright. The skyline of Queens unchanged by war or time. Here, two teenagers had been bitten by the spider, Peter Parker and Harry Osborn, partners from the beginning. He found them on a rooftop mid-patrol laughing at some joke the city below couldn't hear. The armored spider didn't speak. He landed behind them and moved with the speed of inevitability. It was over in seconds. Harry never saw the second blow coming. Peter screamed, the kind of scream that carried love and rage and disbelief, before the armored gauntlet crushed his windpipe. When it was done, the evil spider left their bodies in the same spot, side by side like a warning no one here would understand, until the sky itself tore open. The next world had three: Peter, Mary Jane, Harry, all bitten on the same day. They'd built something like a dynasty here, their city cleaner, safer than most. It didn't matter. The armored spider tore through them in the middle of Times Square, the fight leveling half the block. Mary Jane lasted the longest, her webs catching his blade arm more than once. But she went down like the others, throat torn, mask split. Harry fell into the crater they'd made, unmoving. He left the city burning. Another world. Gwen Stacy in the suit this time, alongside Peter. This one hurt less to kill. Their partnership was new, unsteady. Gwen's eyes behind the lenses were wide with shock when his talons cut through her web line, sending her tumbling into the bay. Peter dove after her. Neither came up. On and on it went. He hunted through the black and red MCU world, where Peter Parker had been molded by the Red Room into something sharp and ruthless. This one fought hard, close range, no hesitation. But the armored spider knew his own moves better than the boy did. The final strike left him hanging in his own web, limp. He crushed the will of the Spider-Man who never gave up the mask in the Raimi verse's second act, the one who'd endured through endless loss. He drowned the symbiote-possessed spider in the third act universe, tearing the black goo from him strand by strand before snapping his spine. Even the ultimate Spider-Man fell, the young one's energy and improvisation useless against the weight of experience. One by one, the threads dimmed. The last world he reached, that cycle was different. Here, Norman Osborn had been the one bitten in 2002. The city bore his touch, cleaner, harsher, more ordered. Norman's suit was regal, crimson with gold webbing, lenses shaped like a predator's eyes. He fought like a soldier, his age giving way to pure precision. The battle lit the Oscorp Tower from within, the two spiders clashing across its upper floors. Norman's webbing was stronger than most. His strikes landed with a weight the evil spider didn't often feel. But even he began to falter under the onslaught. The armored spider had him pinned, talons at his throat, when the rift flared open behind them. Harry Osborn stepped through first, his half-destroyed suit repaired just enough to function. Behind him came the Raimi killer spider, the MK1 armored spider, six-armed Harry, and the rest of the fractured web. Norman's eyes flicked between the armored spider above him and the strangers flooding into his world. He didn't hesitate. The talons came down, and Norman caught them in both hands, straining against the impossible strength, buying Harry the second he needed to tackle the armored figure through the glass. The two crashed onto the tower's outer balcony, the skyline fractured by rift light. For the first time since the hunt began, the evil spider didn't have the advantage of surprise. But he didn't retreat. He fought them all, 9 against 1, and still, they barely drove him back through the rift. Norman stood beside Harry when it sealed, his chest heaving, eyes narrowed. "You're not from here," he said. Harry nodded. "Neither's he, and we're going to need you." Norman looked back at his city, already fraying at the edges, then at the strangers before him. "Then let's get to work." The evil Spider-Man stood in the place between places, the darkness where the web of life stretched out like arteries. He'd been here before, but never this deep. The threads hummed faintly under his hand, vibrating with a pulse he could almost match to his own heartbeat. He wasn't alone in his head. Every kill left echoes. The way Peter's voice cracked when Mary Jane fell in his arms. The sharp gasp of the MK1 armored spider when Venom's claws broke through the plating. The sound of Gwen hitting the water. They came to him at night, not as guilt, but as noise, clutter, distraction. For a time, he wondered if he'd gone too far, if some small ember of the boy he'd been could still be salvaged. But then he saw it, a thread in the web that didn't connect to a single spider. It connected to all of them, the lifeline, the anchor point. If he could bind himself to it, he wouldn't have to kill them one by one. He could cut the entire pattern in a single stroke. The thought burned away the doubt. He left the space between worlds and began hunting again. Not for prey, but for knowledge. In the MCU zombie universe, he fought Spider-Man in tattered armor, jaw half exposed, eyes milky white. The zombie moved with terrifying hunger, biting through web lines, tearing chunks from metal. But in the end, he fell like the rest, his body webbed to a lamppost, his head torn free and thrown into the rift. In a simian world, Spider-Monkey leapt from vine to skyscraper beam, teeth bared, claws raking. He lasted longer than most, using agility and unpredictability to keep the armored spider on defense. But one wrong swing left him open, and the talons found his heart. The Japanese Spider-Man came next, piloting the Leopardon mech. The fight was titanic, steel fists shattering buildings, laser fire searing through the air. But even the mech fell. The armored spider tore into its chest like a predator into prey, ripping out its power core and using the energy to burn through its pilot's suit. From the edge of Spider-Verse came the punk rock anarchist. Guitar slung across his back, webbing strung like electric strings. His defiance was loud, his strikes wild, but the music died with a single, crushing blow. Even the machine fell. SP//DR, the towering robot piloted by a girl, in the future city, its armor peeling away under the evil spider's relentless assault. The cockpit shattered, and she went with it. Each death taught him something. Not just about how they fought, but about how they were connected. Every strike, every kill sent a faint ripple down the web. He could feel the pattern forming in his mind, the route to the anchor. Meanwhile, Harry's resistance was moving but too slow. From their base in Norman Osborn's tower, the mismatched team tried to track the kills, following the rifts as they flared and closed. The map filled with red markers, each one a dead spider. Sometimes they arrived too late, stepping into cities where the only sound was the wind through empty masks hanging from webs. The worst came in the shattered remains of an Art Deco metropolis, the Noir Spider-Man's world. They found him hanging by his own web, chest crushed, his fedora lying in the rubble below. Harry stared at him for a long time before cutting him down. They were losing. And then the kills stopped. Not because the evil Spider-Man had been beaten, but because he was somewhere they couldn't follow. Somewhere inside the web itself. Harry didn't see him in the space between, standing before the anchor thread, talons sparking with the combined energy of every kill. He didn't see him drive those talons into the lifeline, feeling the web convulse around him. He didn't hear the laugh, not of a man, but of someone who knew the end was seconds away. What Harry did see when the sky split over his city was every dead spider he'd failed to save, strung in a single horrific tableau across the rift, a warning and a promise. The rifts weren't opening one at a time anymore. They tore open everywhere at once. Rings of jagged light over cities, deserts, oceans, even skies that weren't blue. Harry stood on the Oscorp Tower balcony, his mask pulled back, the wind full of static. Through each rift, he could see the evil Spider-Man's army. Scorpion from a cyberpunk future, tail tipped with a glowing blade that hissed like acid. Kraven the Hunter, older, scarred, wearing the pelt of a Spider-Man he'd killed in his world. An alternate Green Goblin, face half fused to the mask, glider warped into something like a living thing. Venom, Sandman, Hobgoblin, all from different timelines, their hatred given a single point to focus on. And in the middle, at the edge of a thread that shimmered in the rift light, stood the armored spider himself, talons sunk into the anchor of the web of life. The glow around him pulsed with the stolen energy of every dead spider. Harry's team assembled behind him. The Raimi killer spider flexed his claws. MK1's armor hummed with overcharged repulsors. Six-armed Harry crouched, ready to spring. Norman Osborn's red and gold suit gleamed, his eyes locked on the figure across the rift. "This is it," Harry said. "We stop him here, or there's nothing left to stop." No one answered. They just leapt. The battle was instant chaos, web lines tangling across timelines, energy blasts cutting through buildings that didn't exist seconds before. The MK1 spider clashed with Scorpion, sparks skittering from metal on metal. Norman took the Goblin variant midair, their gliders screaming past each other in arcs of green fire. Harry fought through Venom's reach, claws, and tendrils lashing around him, his web shooters straining to keep the symbiote at bay. Each hit rattled him, each counterstrike pushing him closer to the anchor where the armored spider still worked. And then Peter Electro was there, lightning clearing a path through Kraven and Sandman, his eyes locking on Harry's for the first time since the betrayal at the depot. Harry didn't stop moving. "If you're going to do it now." Peter didn't answer. He just turned, throwing the full force of his power at the armored spider. The energy slammed into the villain's back, crackling across his armor, making him stagger for the first time since this began. The evil Spider-Man turned slowly, the light from the anchor painting half his mask gold. For a moment, Harry thought he saw something like amusement in those dark lenses. "You waited too long," the layered voice said. The talon punched through Peter's chest before Harry could move. The lightning died instantly, his body going limp as the armored spider let him fall. Harry's shout was drowned in the sound of the web, screaming. The anchor was fracturing, threads whipping through the air like cut cables. Rifts blinked open and shut faster now, spilling fragments of worlds into each other. Streets of 1930s New York colliding with Tokyo skyscrapers, oceans emptying into alien jungles. The evil Spider-Man stepped back from the anchor, the glow around him brighter than ever. "One more cut," he said almost to himself. Harry didn't hear the rest. He charged, rage, making every step feel lighter, faster, sharper. This wasn't about the multiverse anymore. This was about Peter. Harry didn't remember getting knocked down, only the sound of concrete cracking under his back, the taste of copper in his mouth, and the blurred shapes of the villains closing in. Scorpion's blade tail hovered over him. Venom's teeth dripped black ichor. Kraven twirled a knife, eyes bright with the thrill of the hunt. The goblin variant loomed above them all, glider humming as it circled. And then the evil Spider-Man stepped into the ring. No rush, no wasted movement, just a slow, deliberate approach, talons dripping with the faint light of the web's energy. The other villains gave way without a word. Harry tried to stand, but his legs buckled. He was on one knee, suit torn open at the ribs, blood soaking the fabric. "You don't have another miracle in you," the layered voice said. "Just end it clean, Osborn." Harry spat blood onto the floor. "You think you're a king. You're not. You're just the only pawn who figured out how to move twice." Something in the way the villains shifted told him they'd heard it too. "You've all felt it," Harry said, his voice raw, but loud enough to cut through the din of the distant battle. "Every order, every fight, none of it's yours. You think you're part of his war? You're fuel. He'll burn you until there's nothing left, and then he'll find more." Kraven's eyes flicked toward the armored spider. Venom's tendrils stilled, just slightly. Even the goblin's glider dipped an inch. For the first time, the evil Spider-Man's head turned, slow, predatory, toward his own troops. "Doubt," he said, almost amused. "Cute." Kraven took a step back from Harry. So did Venom. The goblin's glider drifted lower, his grip on its handlebars loosening. The armored spider moved before anyone could speak. The talons flashed, ripping through Kraven's chest in one smooth arc. Venom lunged, roaring, and the claws punched through the symbiote's skull, light flaring as the body dissolved into nothing. The goblin tried to fly. A talon caught him midair, ripping the glider apart before driving through his armor. The energy from each kill bled into the armored spider's suit. The plates glowing brighter, his movements sharper. The survivors, Scorpion, Hobgoblin, and the Sandglass variant of Sandman, turned fully now, attacking their former master with everything they had. Lightning from Hobgoblin's bombs lit the air. Scorpion's blade shrieked against armor. Sandman tried to engulf him entirely, grinding his body like gears. It bought Harry seconds. He used them to move, one knee, then the other, then a stagger forward. Every step left a trail of blood. His vision tunneled, black creeping in at the edges. But he kept going, hands dragging across the broken ground toward the anchor thread. Behind him, the villains screamed. One by one, their voices cut short. Scorpion's tail clattering to the floor, Hobgoblin's bombs detonating without a scream, Sandman's glass scattering in silence. The evil Spider-Man stood over the bodies, breathing slow, the glow from his armor now almost blinding. Harry fell once, caught himself on his hands, and kept crawling. The armored spider didn't rush. He walked toward Harry like the outcome was already written. When the shadow fell over him, Harry looked up, blood running down his chin. "If I go, I'm taking you with me." The talon came down, and the world went white. Across the multiverse, worlds shuddered, not from the rifts this time, but from something heavier. A kind of absence, a thread cut deep in the pattern. On the rooftop of a fractured New York, the Alex Ross killer spider dropped to one knee, clutching his head. In the neon-lit alleys of the cyberpunk city, MK1 froze, mid-strike against an alternate Scorpion, his HUD flashing warnings he didn't understand. Even Norman Osborn, red and gold suit dimmed from battle damage, felt it. The same cold emptiness he'd felt the night Harry Osborn died in his own world. They all knew. Harry was gone. In the rift space between worlds, the evil Spider-Man moved without opposition now, each step toward the anchor unhurried, inevitable. The glow from his armor bled into the threads themselves, twisting their light darker with every pulse. He had no need to look back. No one was left to challenge him. That was when the new rift opened. It wasn't like the others. No jagged edges, no bleeding of worlds. It was precise, controlled. Harry Osborn stepped through. His suit was repaired, but not to hide the wounds. The dried blood still marked the ribs, the cut across his jaw. His eyes were cold, and he wasn't alone. The boy beside him wore the red and blue suit without the scarring of 100 battles. His lenses were wider, his stance looser. The voice that came through the mask was younger, lighter, unbroken. "Peter," the evil Spider-Man said. And for the first time in this war, his voice didn't have that layered echo. The younger Spider-Man tilted his head. "Guess that's my name in this world too." Harry's voice was flat. "He's you, before." The armored spider's talons flexed. "You brought him here? To what? Plead with me. Show me what I was?" The younger Peter took a step forward. "No. To see what I'll never be." For a long moment, no one moved. The rifts around them pulsed in time with the anchor's glow, each heartbeat a reminder that the web was dying. Then the evil Spider-Man spoke, not to the boy, but to Harry. "You want to know why? Fine. I'll give you the story." He told them of the first kill that wasn't an accident, the way it had felt too easy, how the multiverse had opened before him full of spiders who had what he didn't, who wasted it, how every battle made him stronger, every death quieter in his head, how eventually it stopped feeling like murder and started feeling like pruning a diseased garden. "And you think you can come here with him and change any of that?" The voice was calm now, almost gentle. "There's nothing left to change. The darkness isn't a stain. It's the fabric. You don't wash it out." The younger Peter shook his head. "Maybe not, but I'm still me, and I don't care how strong you are. I'm not letting you erase everyone else just because you gave up." The talons came up. What followed wasn't a duel, it was a storm. The younger Spider-Man moved like a whip, all instinct and speed, dodging strikes the older version had long since stopped needing to dodge. Harry joined in, his blows angled to create openings for the kid, not himself. The evil Spider-Man was stronger, faster, relentless. Every block carrying enough force to rattle bones, every counterstrike aiming to kill. The boy was already bleeding, his suit torn, but his movements stayed sharp, defiance in every step. There was a moment, brief, electric, where the younger Peter had the talon arm pinned, Harry driving a web strike toward the visor. The older spider broke free, shoving them both back with a shockwave of stolen web energy. "You don't win this," he said. Maybe he was right, but Harry saw something in the way the younger Peter stayed on his feet, a refusal the older one had long since forgotten. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The web was screaming, not in sound, but in the way the threads vibrated, snapping one by one. All around, the rifts poured light and shadow into each other, cities folding over oceans, skies bleeding into alien jungles, streets cracking under the weight of buildings that had never stood there before. On one fractured platform of stone and glass suspended in the rift light, Harry Osborn, the younger Peter Parker, and the evil Spider-Man were alone. The battle around them, the clash of villains and surviving spider variants, was distant now, as if the web itself had pulled back to watch. The first strike came from Harry, a shoulder tackle that shoved the older spider back toward the anchor's edge. The younger Peter was on him a heartbeat later, fists and kicks in a flurry, trying to keep the talons too busy to reach for the web. It wasn't enough. The older spider's armor glowed with the power of 100 kills, every movement efficient and cruel. He caught Harry's punch, drove a knee into his ribs, spun him aside. A backhand caught the boy in the jaw, sent him tumbling across the platform. "You can't win," the older spider said, not taunting but certain. You're fighting gravity. You're fighting time. The younger Peter spat blood and stood. Then we're fighting until we hit the ground. They came at him together. No space between them. Harry's blows angled low to break stance. Peter's high to force defense. For a few seconds, they pressed him back, closer and closer to the platform's jagged edge. Then the stone beneath them groaned. A fracture shot through it, splitting the platform in two. The gap widened, dropping chunks of debris into the rift below. When the dust cleared, the three of them were isolated from the others. The rest of the Spider-Verse heroes now only silhouettes across the chasm. On the far side, Norman Osborn, six-armed Harry, and the MK1 armored Spider fought to hold back the villains who hadn't fled. Scorpion's blade flashing, Hobgoblin's bombs detonating, Kraven roaring with the fury of the cornered. Somewhere beyond them, Spider-Woman and the Alex Ross Killer Spider worked with the others to weave emergency web lines across the shattered anchor, trying to stitch the web back together before it tore completely apart. Here, there was only the fight. The older Spider moved first, a blur of talons and blade strikes that forced Harry and Peter onto the defensive. Harry caught one slash across the shoulder, the armor tearing. Peter took another to the side, his suit splitting open, blood blooming against the red fabric. Then, in one fluid motion, the older Spider's hand shifted, the talon retracting, replaced by a curved blade with a cruel edge, its shape unmistakable. A goblin blade reshaped into something alive. He feinted toward Harry. Peter saw it coming and moved. The blade punched through his chest before Harry even registered he'd leapt. The younger Spider's eyes went wide behind the lenses, his breath catching. The older Spider twisted the blade and then let him fall. Harry caught him before he hit the ground. "Why?" Harry started, but Peter's voice was faint, broken. "Better me." His hand tightened weakly on Harry's arm. "Don't stop." Something broke in Harry's chest. He lowered Peter gently to the platform, then stood, every nerve screaming, every strike from here on fueled by something deeper than rage. The fight became pure brutality. No tactics, no feints. Just Harry hammering the older Spider back, blow after blow, armor cracking, light leaking from the seams. The older Spider still struck hard, but each hit was slower, more desperate. When Harry finally knocked him to his knees, the mask was fractured enough to see one eye beneath. And it wasn't cruel, it was tired. "You kill me," the older Spider said, "and it all resets. None of this ever happened. You heroes, you get your worlds back, but I'm gone, both of me." He glanced at the boy's still form. "And him, he's already gone. Maybe that's for the best." Harry's fist clenched. "Maybe, but not because you decided it." He drove the final strike through the cracked visor. The light in the armor flared, and then collapsed inward, pulling the older Spider into nothing. The web shuddered. The rifts began to close, the broken threads knitting back together at impossible speed. Across the battlefield, the destroyed cities, the drowned worlds, the Spider variants who had been slaughtered, all began to return. Harry found himself back on solid ground, the Oscorp Tower skyline intact. Around him stood the Spider-Verse heroes he'd fought beside, alive now, masks whole, unaware anything had happened, except Norman, and six-armed Harry, and the Alex Ross Killer Spider. They all looked as he did, remembering. He turned. The younger Peter was there, but only for a second, a faint afterimage smiling in that easy, unbroken way. Then he was gone, and the platform was empty. Harry stood in the quiet, the city alive again beneath him. He had saved everything, but the cost would never leave him. Epilogue. the weight of threads. The first thing Harry noticed was the quiet. No riffs humming overhead, no threads vibrating like snapped cables, no worlds bleeding into each other. Just the steady rush of city air over the Oscorp Tower balcony, the kind he'd heard 1,000 times before the war. Below, New York was as it had always been. Traffic, voices, the distant wail of a siren. The skyline was whole, the scars of the incursion were gone. He touched the railing, half expecting it to shimmer away like a dream. It didn't. Behind him, movement. Norman Osborn stepped out from the tower's shadow, his red and gold suit restored. No scorch marks, no webbing patches. The Alex Ross killer spider landed silently beside him, visor reflecting the morning light. Six-armed Harry perched on the railing, arms folded. None of them spoke. They didn't need to. They remembered. Not every detail, the shape of the battles blurred, the faces of the dead like fog. But enough. The riffs, the fight, the boy. A thwip broke the silence. Harry turned. Peter Parker Electro landed lightly on the balcony, the faint static in his suit fading as he straightened. His mask came off, revealing a face untouched by the betrayals and deaths Harry had seen. Got a weird feeling, Peter said, frowning. Like deja vu, but bigger. You ever get that? Harry didn't answer right away. He just looked at him, really looked, at the friend who had once stood beside him, then against him, then died in front of him. A friend who in this world had never done any of it. Yeah, Harry said finally. I get it. Peter shrugged it off, smiling faintly. Well, city's not gonna save itself. You coming? Harry glanced past him at the others. Norman's watchful stare. The killer spider's unreadable mask. Six-armed Harry's quiet smirk. All of them alive, here, now. All of them carrying the same faint unease, like a song half heard in a dream. Yeah, Harry said again. I'm coming. They swung out into the city, one by one, arcs of color against the clear morning sky. From a rooftop across the way, Harry paused. He looked down at the streets, the people, the cars, the life. And for a second, he saw another skyline overlaid on it. A shattered platform. A boy in red and blue, smiling as he faded. It was gone in a blink. Harry pulled his mask down, the wind catching in the fabric, and dove after the others. Somewhere in the web, he thought, maybe the boy was still watching. And if not, Harry would carry the weight for both of them.